Today, we're going to go inside the skunk works. We're peeling back the hood on SRT, but not from some journalist's perspective. No, we're doing it from the inside, from someone who was right there in the room, turning the wrenches and crunching the numbers. I was one of the engineers who got to live this story, so let's get into it. So, what really happens when you take a group of absolute die-hard gearheads, the best and brightest engineers in the business, and you give them a mission with no frills, no fluff, just pure, unadulterated purpose? This was it. This was our mission statement. It was literally plastered on the walls of our workshop. We weren't building commuters. We were engineering absolute legends. And believe it or not, it all started with a snake. Okay, let's rewind the clock to 1989. Chrysler's president at the time, Bob Lutz, he has this wild idea. What if we built a modern-day Cobra? So he tasked a small, super passionate group of 85 engineers to make it happen. They called themselves Team Viper. And that right there, that was the seed from which everything else would grow. We went through a bit of an identity crisis in those early days. First, we were Team Viper. Then we merged with the guys over at Team Prowler, who had a totally different mandate, by the way, all about retro design. And we became SVE, Specialty Vehicle Engineering. In 2002, we were renamed PVO, which always sounded a bit sterile for our tastes. But finally, in 2004, we landed on the name that just perfectly captured our soul, Street and Racing Technology, SRT. Oh man, I remember the debates in the engineering meetings. The safe bet, the corporate choice, was a Hemi V8. But our boss, Bob Lutz, he wasn't about playing it safe. He wanted something that would absolutely shock the world. A V10. From an engineering standpoint, it was a nightmare, but it gave the Viper its venom. And the result was this absolute monster, an 8-liter V10. And get this, we had development help from Lamborghini, which Chrysler actually owned at the time. This thing was raw, no electronic nannies, nothing. It embodied our core belief back then. There's simply no replacement for displacement. 400 horsepower was a colossal figure for 1992. So the Viper put us on the map in a big way, but we couldn't just rest on our laurels. The world was changing, and so were we. While we still loved our big, burly engines, we started asking a new question. What if we could make them even more powerful? The answer was forced induction. And let me tell you, for an engineer, this is where the real fun begins. But first, a quick lesson in how to speak SRT. We kept it super simple. The number after the badge tells you exactly what's under the hood. An SRT4, that's a 4-cylinder. An SRT10, you guessed it, a 10-cylinder beast. It was honest, direct, pure function, just like our cars. So our first big steps into forced induction resulted in two very different machines. They really proved that the SRT formula could work on a smaller scale. The SRT4 was this huge surprise hit. We sold over 25,000 of them. And the SRT6, well, that was a unique cross-Atlantic collaboration. The on-road feel of these two cars couldn't have been more different. The SRT4 was a little hooligan. It had this turbo that kicked in like a mule, an absolute riot. The SRT6, on the other hand, used a supercharged engine straight from Mercedes-AMG. It was more of a Germanic brute, a smooth, relentless wave of power. It was a fascinating experiment in two totally different ways to get to the same goal, speed. But the real heart of the brand, what truly brought SRT to the masses and became our volume seller, was the V8. Specifically, the SRT8 models, packing that legendary 6.1-liter Hemi. And this wasn't just a bigger version of the standard engine. It was a complete re-engineering job, right from the block up. Let me be really clear about this. This was not a simple tune-up. We took the standard 5.7-liter Hemi and we re-engineered it from the inside out. We're talking revised coolant channels, oil jets squirting at the bottom of the pistons, stuff you'd normally only see on a full-blown race engine. We built it to be abused because we knew our customers would. The SRT8s were a massive success. But then, an idea that had been brewing in our labs for a while finally broke loose. What if we combined our two great loves, the massive Hemi V8s and the instant, brutal power of a supercharger? The result was a project codenamed Hellcat. And it changed everything. Okay, let's establish our baseline here. Our beloved 6.1-liter Hemi V8, the king of our lineup, it produced a very healthy 425 horsepower. That was our benchmark for V8 performance, a very respectable number. And then came the Hellcat, 707 horsepower. I still remember the day the final number was certified. There was just silence in the room, then pure disbelief. It wasn't just a step up, it was a quantum leap. It completely reset the entire performance landscape. Just look at that gap. We added 282 horsepower. That is more than the entire output of our first SRT4. We were basically telling the world that the horsepower wars were back on, and this time we intended to win. This slide really captures the evolution of our thinking. On one hand, you have the Viper's V10, the peak of the no replacement for displacement era, with its long, linear pull of torque. On the other, the Hellcat, which delivered a brutal, instantaneous wall of torque right off idle. It wasn't about making engines bigger anymore, it was about making them smarter. In fact, this new philosophy became so dominant that the peak supercharged V8, the 840 horsepower Demon, made 195 times more horsepower than the most powerful Viper we ever built. The V10 had officially passed the torch. The Demon was a real engineering puzzle, balancing that insane power with street legality using things like the trans brake and a special ECU just for race fuel. See, the Hellcat wasn't just an engine, it was a strategy. It created a flexible, top-tier performance architecture that we could adapt and deploy across the entire product line. It was all about solidifying Dodge as the performance brand. And that led to a really key business decision in 2014. SRT was folded back into Dodge. And the logic was simple. Instead of SRT being a niche group making special cars, the entire Dodge brand would now become synonymous with the performance and the attitude that we had perfected. And just look at the results. We put that incredible engine in a muscle car, we jammed it into an SUV to create the Trackhawk, and then we created the 702 horsepower Ram TRX, applying that same exact formula to build the most powerful production truck in the world, completely dominating the competition. This right here, this is the secret sauce of SRT. Every project fed into the next one. The lessons we learned from the Viper's handling helped us tame the Hellcat. The durability testing we did on the Hellcat engine gave us the confidence to put it in the TRX. It was this constant feedback loop of innovation, and that is what made us so effective. So when you look back at the whole journey from Team Viper all the way to the TRX, what does street and racing technology really truly stand for? Well, it's a lot more than just a name. It stands for this. Our mission was to deliver benchmark performance, full stop. To do it with engineering integrity so the numbers on the page actually match the feeling on the street, and above all, to deliver a visceral, emotional experience every single time you turn that key. That was our job, and that is the SRT legacy.